So when we talk about technology though, how do we separate out the sense of overwhelm with balancing trusting it as a tool? Because I think that is the hardest part. When I first started using a sensor and really like trusted it, I was probably I don't know, probably 10, 11 years ago. And there were newer versions that would come out every year with software updates. But I remember the tight control that we all know is required, really recommended for pregnancy. And my first pregnancy was pricking my finger every half an hour. And then the second pregnancy came around, my diabetes educator was like, Anna, you're going insane. You need to pick one, either prick your finger every hour or don't prick it at all and go off of the CGM because there will always be a discrepancy. And I want to hammer that home because I think, again, I work a lot with parents and families around these fears of lows and reliability on the arrows, especially when they have access to following the share, but not necessarily are physically next to them. So it can be really challenging for parents to not have the ability to ask how they're feeling and still have access to that fear.
Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. My name is Anna Sabino. I am a mental health clinician and diabetes educator with Integrated Diabetes Services. I also live with type 1 for 37 years now. And my good gal, Alicia, is here too.
Hi, I'm Alicia Downs with all of these letters. I'm a nurse and educator here at Integrated Diabetes. I also live life with type 1, but I'm the diababy of the group. I've only lived with it for about 20 years now.
Babies.
Even our youngest staff member has more years of type 1 under her belt than I do. So I'll take it where I can get it.
Awesome. So I know that both Alicia and I use technology, and a lot of people come to Integrated Diabetes Services with questions about technology. They're curious about technology. They're burnt out by technology and their desire to understand technology and how it interacts with our T1D. But what happens when there's too much of it? I think today we're going to dig into, okay, well, what is tech? What are these tools that are essentially helping us live life with T1D with a little bit less mental burden? I know it definitely helps my mental load. And then what happens when we don't trust it? And do we trust the technology? And then what are some tips and tricks to help us maybe overcome some of the burnout of T1D?
I mean, tech is our life, right? I mean, we're using tech now to do this.
Yeah.
It's never more than a hand's reach away. And so we see in daily life, that there's big discussions. How much tech is too much tech? What tech is good for us? What tech is bad for us? What is it doing? How is it changing us and how we live our lives? I think we're fortunate that we're a late Gen X, early senior millennial, depending on which, Facebook.
I'm not far behind you.
And the fact that I referenced Facebook lets you know probably more Gen X than millennial. But we had the experience of growing up with a lot less tech and a lot lower tech interplay in our lives, and certainly in our diabetes management. And then through a transition where it's become more and more the norm to have more and more tech. And we grew up in the time where it was, HAL and the Terminator, and too much tech was going to kill us all and destroy the world. We've got kind of a both sides of the fence view.
And I think there's something really powerful to that because we don't like to wait for things in our society now, whether it's YouTube or, we want it here and now. And we don't have ads or commercials. And there's always a way to dance around what you don't want to tolerate. And with diabetes, if we don't tolerate what we're not satisfied with on something like a CGM, it can get us into medical trouble. Like, a severe low when we rage bolus and like, why isn't it going down? Why isn't it going down? And then the opposite when we might overtreat a low because the arrow just hasn't quite caught up yet. And I think that's one of the hardest parts for me is just waiting. But to your point, I remember being in middle school in the 90s and I literally had to sit there. My blood sugar was like maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 at lunch before I went down to the cafeteria. And I would have my juice box and I'd sit there and all the other kids would come take their meds or their lunchtime inhaler before recess. And I would literally just be sitting there and be like, can I go? Can I go? And it was hard, but I also knew that my body needed that time to come up. And there was no other way for me to sit in that discomfort. And I'm not saying we should let our kids sit in a discomfort of a horrible low. No. And it's also teaching us that waiting is okay.
And that our
And
bodies
letting the
need and
body
deserve.
have that time to process what it needs to process in order to get back to baseline.
I think we are given a lot of information. Again, it's not just
You don't
diabetes, it's
say.
our world, right? We're given a lot of info. And so the burden feels like your responsibility is to then do something with it. And we get so tired. There's a line from a movie that always comes to mind, Ever After, that he says, I feel like there are all these things. And if I can't do something about everything, I'm going to fly apart. So I do nothing.
Yeah. We're kind of almost like paralyzed and
Yeah.
overwhelmed with too much of it.
Right.
And,
But we also
my
feel like it's
home,
our job to do
yeah.
something about
Well,
everything.
and
And
that's
it's
that's the
not.
key too, especially with parents who are trying to like manage from afar if their kids at school or a sleepover especially. You know, not every blood sugar requires you to take action. We don't respond to every text message or every email or every bit of information that comes our way, or we'd literally go insane. And I think that's where a lot of the corporate burnout comes from in the working world and, diabetes aside. And, if we respond every single blood sugar, like we will have no life.
And we'll have kids that don't know how to be with imperfection. We buy the lie that it's our job to like give our kids this perfect childhood, right? But we learn through error. We learn through injury. We learn through brushes with harm that don't leave
Yeah.
lasting damage, hopefully.
Hmm.
But let's face it, if Anna wouldn't have a job if our brushes with harm didn't leave lasting damage. But, our
Prevention.
kids
Yeah,
well, our kids
exactly.
fall. Our kids,
They get scrapes. They
they
need
scrape their knees.
band-aids.
They get sick. We don't jump in on every infection. And if we
Mhm.
do, our pediatrician goes, "Hey, rattle down." We don't jump in on every fall. We teach them, "Oh, you're okay. Look, we made it. Yeah, oh yeah." And my job as a parent is to teach my child how to fall well, how to get up, how to maybe walk with a
How to
limp a
how
little
to
bit, put some
repair a
ice
little
on it.
bit of those,
Yeah.
so when we talk about technology though, how do we separate out the sense of overwhelm with balancing trusting it as a tool? Because I think that is the hardest part. When I first started using a sensor and really like trusted it, I was probably I don't know, probably 10, 11 years ago, and there were newer versions that would come out every year with software updates. But I remember the tight control that we all know is required, really recommended for pregnancy. And my first pregnancy was pricking my finger every half an hour. And then the second pregnancy came around, my diabetes educator was like, Anna, you're going insane. You need to pick one, either prick your finger every hour or don't prick it at all and go off of the CGM because there will always be a discrepancy. And I want to hammer that home because I think, again, I work a lot with parents and families around these fears of lows and reliability on the arrows, especially when they have access to following the share, but not necessarily are physically next to them. So it can be really challenging for parents to not have the ability to ask how they're feeling and still have access to that fear, because there is a 10-15 minute lag, and there always will be. So I think just accepting that difference is there, and figuring out a way to maybe like think before you, in terms of, rushing to the school or panicking over a potential arrow, is really where, I do a lot of work, and I know you do too, around just like processing the emotions of all of the overwhelm.
My job is a lot. So Anna's job is really focused on the emotions. My job, well, also emotions, because diabetes is in our lives. And
Mhm,
that's part of our
mhm.
emotions. And my theory of my signature in my emails says mental health is health,
Yeah.
because it is.
Oh
Our
yeah.
brains and our bodies are not separate things. We are moving through this world all hopefully integrated. Hey, integrated diabetes, yes. But what we need is often some perspective. So we go, okay, AI, should I trust it? And we step back from the world of AI and we go, okay, before AI existed, where did my information come from and how did I know to trust it? What skills do I already have to enter this space? Well, my information came from books that had been through several layers of editors and review before it got into my hands. Okay, so I'll look for that from information I'm getting from AI. Has it come through several sets of hands? Okay, my information came from family, friends, people I knew and trusted because I knew them offline as well as on. Okay, so now I'm in AI. I'm going to look. Are the sources that are being used sources that I would trust outside of this AI context? Apply the skills I have. I need to do that with my diabetes management too. So when we're looking at our tech, we're talking a lot about CGM over here,
Mm.
insulin pumps over here, and then the fact that those have now smushed together and are one thing. Just like the internet, right? We used to have like our phones and our communication over here, and then we had like the internet over
Yeah,
here, and
they
now they're
were
smushed. They're
separated,
all
they were
one thing, right?
compartmentalized, like, you had a home phone, like,
Right.
my kids are 6 and 8, and I think when we went to my parents' house that I grew up in, they were like, "What's that?" They heard the phone ring on the wall, and they were like, "You picked the phone off
Right.
the
What is that?
wall?
But we've
Wow.
got this perspective.
Wow."
And so
Yeah.
when it comes to our diabetes tech, again, coming from a little bit of space is to go, okay, CGM to the point where it is reliable enough to replace a finger stick is less than a decade old. It's about 8 years old when we came out with the first FDA approved CGM to replace finger stick. I know because
Yeah.
I was sitting in this office.
Mhm. Yep.
So
And it
that gives
felt
us,
weird. It felt weird. It felt weird the
oh,
first
yeah.
time and I'm thinking of like a different version of tech. I remember the first time like I was using a tandem pump, and it was basal IQ technology before control IQ, which was at both ends. Basal
Yeah.
IQ was just there to prevent the
Oh,
lows. And I remember being like, what's that beep? It was just
yeah.
new for me every time I, heard a trend down.
Yeah.
And your instinct is feel low, treat low. That's what I do. And like we all know, we didn't often prick the finger, stop and prick. You just treated the low because you wanted to treat the symptom, not the number, and get it up quicker. And that meant, okay, I'm going to have 2 glucose tabs. An hour later, I was 150 with a double arrow up, and I'm like, what the heck? Well, my pump had done what it was supposed to do, and I guess I just hadn't trusted it yet. But we're still learning. We're still learning. But I think what I want to emphasize here is like there are so many nuances to the tech, and like, should we trust the technology? What is the goal? Like, I think I ask this a lot in my sessions, like, what is the goal of using the technology? And if you have a hard time answering that, you're going to have a really hard time trusting this technology and understanding it. And if we don't understand it, if we don't understand what it's doing in the background, it can be really hard to trust the tech. And I would say probably close to 3/4 of the people that I see say, oh, I don't trust it. Oh, I don't trust it. I don't trust the technology. And it's like, oh, okay, why are you using it again?
Well, and here's my question is, so having the perspective of, okay, this thing is less than 10 years old, and we're already, like, if we're already on our third, fourth ideation of it
Yeah.
in 10 years. So that's banging out changes. The word trust doesn't have to mean I blindly trust.
Right.
There are a lot of people that will say, what, you don't trust me? And what they mean is you don't blindly trust me. That person is manipulating you, because you should not be asked to blindly trust anyone
Yeah.
or anything. So trust is proportionate to expectation.
Yeah.
So, like, I can trust my 8-year-old son. I can trust him. I trust him
I
every
don't know
night
if
when
I
I go
trust
to
my
sleep.
8-year-old, but
I trust him not to jump out his bedroom window. I
right.
trust him to
It's all
tell
in
me whether he had homework.
it's all in perspective.
It's in perspective, but I don't trust my 8-year-old to make financial decisions for our family. That would be insane. So when I'm looking at my tech, I am going to trust it within my framework, within my expectation. And so if we expect our tech to be perfect, if we expect our tech to be glitch free, if we expect our tech to be able to operate at the speed of the human body, no, don't trust that. That is not, your expectation will never be met. That trust will be broken, period.
Yeah.
Because that's not where we are. We are dealing with a device that's new because it's always changing and adapting. We're dealing with tech that is inherently fallible. Once you run an electric current through a thing, it's going to break. We're also dealing with the interaction, like you said, of really complex systems.
Oh, yeah, you've
And we
got
have
signal
two
loss,
choices.
you've got the connectivity piece. It's a complex, like,
Got
everybody thinks
algorithms on top of
therapy
algorithms on top of
is, like, gonna
algorithms.
make it easier. Define easier, because I think everybody has a different version of easy. And one of the biggest validation terms I use, like, in therapy is like, like, a lot of people will just vent. They use the session where they just need to let it all out. They don't know a lot of other people or adults or, living with type 1, myself included. Our staff meetings are full of just like, text thread is worse. And I was like, wow, I bet you weren't expecting that to happen. And even just those words alone, like, you weren't expecting that. I mean, talk about validation when, like, this morning I was at the gym and all of a sudden I was doing the little, like, CrossFit style workout Metcon, and I'm in the third round of the 4-round cycle on the, like, bike, and I'm just like, that flip of a switch, that blood sugar's going down and you just don't feel like you feel off. Reached down, looked at my pump, and it said 87 arrow down, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna just get off, go grab a couple, like, glow gummies and modify as needed, or just, like, go slower. But I wasn't expecting that to happen. And that comes with just trusting that I'm treating the symptoms and not the number. And it comes from, again, the years of not having access to that. And so
Had time and space to build
one of the
trust in
biggest
your
takeaways
physiology.
I want to share is that, we are not able to live in a world of discomfort anymore. And that understanding your own symptoms, and I'm not telling you to go force a low blood sugar on yourself or on your kids, but, like, we're not allowing us to go out of range anymore. And I think a little bit out of range, like we said before, is building that resilience and, like, flexing those muscles a little bit. Give kids the catalyst for long-term success. Having, like, a high blood sugar where, they forgot something. Okay, well, what is that going to teach them? That's going to teach them next time they're going to have a vial and a syringe ready to go. It took me a while to do that, but I think you're 100%. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid to trust something because we're afraid of the unknown. And I think that's the hardest part.
I think we are denied opportunities to build trust in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the foundation of resiliency and
Yeah.
empowerment, is trusting myself. So to trust, my body doesn't feel good. How do I need to react to that? in comparison to what the numbers are telling me. So I've got this thing over here that's technology that I'm being told, build trust in this. And then I've got me and my body, and I need to build trust in it. And so I need to observe the two sort of independently. And as I'm able to build trust through expectation being met, I can bring those closer together and something will happen and push them a little farther apart, just like a person. I'm going to have a friend.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get to know them outside of my life. They're going to come into my life more and more and more. And then they're going to do something. I'm going to, maybe back up a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're a horrible person. They need to leave my life. They're
No,
untrustworthy.
no.
It just means we're going to step back a little bit and then work on building some trust again. And
And
that's
that
how we
takes
work with our tech.
time.
Yeah.
That takes time. And I think we are not like allowing ourselves to wait to sort of like my previous point is
Yeah.
like 15
Sit
minutes
in it.
when your blood sugar is low feels like an eternity. And I will tell you, I felt better like probably 7 or 8 minutes later after I had, 3 of those little like glucose gummies. I don't even think my blood sugar got down to the 50s or 60s. I felt low. I mean, maybe it was, I didn't prick, but I have 37 years of knowing it's never not come back up. And I think we're
Evidence of
instilled
the
this
fact that you're here.
education of like, don't go low, you could have a seizure. And those 3 words, like could have a seizure, is what we hang on to, not the reframing of like 99% of the time, your
More
blood
than that
sugar is
now.
not in seizure range. Like it's just not. And so reframing our, like you said, our own perspective and keeping that front of mind when we're talking about the tech. Yeah, more times than not, I feel like the tech for me, even just on a pump, like I'll look down and yeah, it's a burden. It gets in the way. I have to delay the time I'm leaving the house because the charger in my car is not working. So I have to charge the pump, at least get it to 10% before I can run down and run an errand. Or I look down and I have 4 units left and I'm like, oh crap.
Or you're a
Well,
CGM day one and it says LOW and you say,
no.
totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Middle of the night, you're like, compression low. I know where this is going.
Settled on some really important tools, I think, that I just want to pause and highlight. One is setting healthy expectation.
Absolutely.
So know what to expect. What are the capabilities? What is realistic? The next is
What do you mean by
building trust.
realistic? Kind of just like targets?
How accurate is my CGM going to be?
Yeah.
When is it going to be off? And I can say, it's off right now. That's not a surprise. That's normal. That's what it
Right.
should be doing. That is within standard operating expectations.
Right.
What should my time in range look like? How high is high? How low is low? And a lot of this we don't get from our doctors. We don't get from the internet. That's what a lot of what we do. It's a lot of what Anna does, but it's a lot of what I do as a clinician at IDS is let's make sure you've got the knowledge to set healthy expectations on how does your CGM work? How does your pump work? How does your body work? How does your algorithm work? How does your food work? So that you can have healthy expectations of yourself, your body, your tech. And then you can form trust. And trust is that integration. When expectations are met, we can integrate, and that's trust. And that doesn't mean it's not blind trust. Blind trust is abusive. And when we trust something blindly or we think we're asked to, we get scared, we get angry, we get resentful, we pull back, and actually we raise expectations. And so then we can't trust. It's really unhealthy.
And then we react and we overreact.
Right.
And it leads us to this like total circle of complete burnout.
Right. And we can't build resilience in that space because
Yeah.
we have to have healthy expectations so that we can build healthy trust, so that on that we can grow in resilience and empowerment. And, the phrase knowledge is power really is true in a lot of ways,
Oh, especially when it
in
comes
that if it's
to
helping
tech.
in that. But if the knowledge is not helpful, it's going to undermine all that. That often happens when we only have part of a story. So like that friend that suddenly they do something and I go, that's not what I expected from you. So I pull back trust. I start to build trust again when I connect with the friends and I go, where were you coming from? Where did that come from? And I understand not just
Yeah.
one side of the story, mine, I understand their side too. And then I
Yep.
can go, okay, I get where that came from now. We can resolve if there are barriers that need to be resolved. And then we can start integrating trust again with our devices and our tech world and apps and AI. We're getting a lot of questionable or conflicting information. So our expectations aren't met.
Yeah. I think
And
that's
so
the
what do we do there?
foundation of tech, and I think the hard part is that we all know, like, we are not educated enough. If you look at, like, the ADCES or, CBDCE, like, most people, like, don't see a diabetes educator. I mean, I don't. I'm not told I should, but I mean, I am one, but that
Months.
doesn't mean yeah. That doesn't mean I shouldn't be like properly reminded and educated. I mean, there are people that come to us that were literally sent home with a syringe and a vial saying good luck. Don't even get me started on the number of people that have been, especially adults now, who have been misdiagnosed and sent home with metformin. And then, the education is like follow up in a few months. We need constant education. You need that time to build up that sense of like accepting the imperfections. And I'm not emphasizing like you need to have out of range numbers, but I think until we can have some of these slightly out of range numbers and start to utilize some of the tools within the tech, we're not going to we're not going to trust ourselves to do it. But knowing your role from a knowledge perspective, like, okay, my role is to count the carbs in the best way I know how with all the resources, whether that is like a full on scale or just like guess and go because you're at Applebee's, wherever, which is, let's be real, what a lot of us do a lot of the time, which is fine. Your role is to do the input, then put the knowledge that you have into the device. The role of a pump or a CGM is not to be like your brain. And I think that, again, is reminding ourselves the expectation is like we drive the behavior of the device. The device is like kind of like a car. We've got, all the preset stations, channels, whatnot, and it's going to go if you tell it to go. Or you're still responsible for giving that bolus. You're still responsible for turning it on, hitting that bolus delivery confirmation, charging the device, charging the car, giving it gas, whatever it is. Understanding what your role is and then understanding what the role of the device is from that kind of 40,000 foot view. I think you're right, Alicia. We don't do a lot of it. When I used to do pump trainings like in home, the first question I would always ask is, why do you want to pump? What do you understand about this so far? What are you most excited about? Because if we're not asking those critical questions up front, even to ourselves, or doing like a mental health check-in every now and then, we're going to get really overwhelmed and those roles are going to blend and then it's going to get frustrating.
A lot of people come into diabetes management from a lot of different perspectives
Mhm.
with a lot of different goals. I think one of the biggest reasons that there is such a disconnect between us and our healthcare providers and us and our world is our healthcare providers have a goal for us,
Mm.
but they often don't even tell us what it is, much less why it matters to
Mm.
us. And they even less frequently then look at us and say, what's your goal? And do those two work together well? And again, expectation, integration, trust. My doctor has one set of expectations. I have another. We try to integrate. That doesn't work. I don't trust my doctor. My
Yeah.
tech has a set of goals. The algorithm literally has a target and a target range and all of that.
Yeah.
What's its goal? What's my goal? Can we integrate and reach the
Yeah.
expectation to build trust? What is your goal is so important, and recognizing that it is not only okay to not have a goal to meet every potential wonderfulness that there is in diabetes management. It's not possible. You cannot have perfect blood sugar and be really empowered and relaxed and have a great quality of life and eat whatever you want and be a top level athlete. So hi, Gary. You cannot do it all. I'm sorry, women raised in the 80s and 90s. You can't do it all.
You
I
can't do
can't.
it all without support,
Well,
without
no, you
help.
can't do it all, Anna. I
No,
don't care how
no,
good a
well,
therapist you are, girl. You can't do it all. You have to, and we all have a different priority
yeah,
of our goals. Some people are like, I want the most time in range. Some people
yeah,
are like, I want to not have interrupted sleep. Some
yeah.
people are like, I want to be as knowledgeable about everything as I possibly can be. We all
I
have
wanna do
different
all the
goals.
clinical trials. I wanna do yeah.
Who
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
knows? I want a flat line. I want this, I want that. I mean, and it's important to know what your goals are and what the priority of them is so that when life gets stressful, you know which one's dropping off and you
Mhm.
can be okay with that. So that when you're unwell, you can look and say, maybe I need to reprioritize my goals. Maybe those sleepless nights are coming at the cost of quality sleep.
Yep.
Where can I meet one without sacrificing it? It doesn't have to drop to the bottom, but how can I
It's
shift
gonna
it?
shift.
Because it's
And
going
maybe
to
you're going on a trip and, like, that goal has to kind of shift
shift. The
down.
goal of, I always tell
Yeah.
parents, the goal of school is not perfect blood sugar.
Yeah,
The goal of school is learning, social learning, academic learning.
right.
So we need to
I'm pretty
shift
sure
priorities.
I probably took every math test in elementary school with the blood sugar well over 2 or 300. Like, I don't know. I probably did. My A1C was double digits for a little while, and, like, I'm okay. I'm not saying that's great, but
That's another important thing with goals and priorities. And it's funny that we talk about
oh, I could
pregnancy.
talk
I
about
had
this
type,
till, like, the cows come home.
right?
I have a love-hate relationship with technology. I think we all do.
Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation.
Talking about pregnancy. Pregnancy is always a hot button issue.
Mhm.
Pregnancy and kids, right? Because pregnancy is building kids. Tight control is so important. It is the focus of pregnancy in type 1 diabetes and any diabetes. And I think it's the focus of just pregnancy as a whole in our modern world is like, let's see how much we can observe and control and don't eat this, don't do that, don't lay on this side, use this pillow, but not that, so many things. And I was an educated resource person. So I felt that my responsibility was to have the healthiest pregnancy I could, which meant doing as many things right as I could. And therefore, anything that I couldn't do was a failure. And my brain had bought this incorrect correlation that doing all the good things was to have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. I then flipped that script and said, not doing everything will result in an unhealthy pregnancy and an unhealthy baby.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
That is first of all, unattainable expectation.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is just, you
Well, and
can't do all the
the hard
things.
part is accepting that. And that
Right.
I mean, that's where a lot of the grief work comes in, that's where
Right.
a lot of the trauma work that you and I do
And the
come in,
perspective
and the
work.
perspective work,
My
which
doctor
is
told me the most magical thing. My doctor said, Alicia, perspective. There are women every day in third world countries who have never seen a doctor, never taken a prenatal vitamin, never have an ultrasound, having perfectly healthy babies every day.
yeah,
The fact that you're not having a perfect pregnancy does not mean that you are not having a healthy pregnancy. So I took that and I applied that to my world.
Yeah.
There are people with diabetes who have no
They have
technology,
nothing.
very limited
I
technology.
went to Belize, and this was an aha moment for me. I may have even said this on another podcast, but I remember driving around the like countryside in Belize, visiting homes of people with type 1. Actually, there was this woman who was 19 weeks pregnant. She didn't even know she was supposed to be taking any type of folic acid, and she had type 1. She had not pricked her finger in the entire pregnancy. And I was like, oh, well, how do you know how much insulin to give? Your body is changing. You need more insulin as the baby grows. She was like, well, I know if it's high, if I urinate on the street and ants come to it because of the sweetness in the urine. And that broke my heart. This is the reality of the world. Is it
Yeah.
the reality of most of us living in the US today? No, but it is perspective.
If she can do it with nothing and probably better mental health than the average American,
Mm,
I can do it with something, even my very imperfect something. But
yeah.
don't take it the other way,
Yeah.
because the false dichotomy is if she can do it with nothing, I have to, and for some reason, morally, ethically should do it with everything all the time as well as physically possible. No, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah.
In between, she should have more access and I should have more grace. I should have more space and freedom. It's
Well, and
not
you
my
said the word
job to be.
should. You said the word should, and that, I also wanna mention too, we are in a world of constant comparison, and I also ask a lot of my clients, how much time do you spend on these like Facebook groups, which are very helpful in terms of like, I need a CGM. They're a quick fix. Like these groups are not meant to, if they're not serving their purpose and they're not helping you get to your goal, they are not helpful for you. You're supposed to be using again them as a tool. Your diabetes may vary. Every single diabetes story varies. I've
And
already had
that's
one client. I have another one in 10 minutes. Everybody has a different story. Everybody wants to share their story. And I think a lot of people think tech is better. Tech looks cool. It's sleek. You have better outcomes on technology. Even 10, 15 years ago, especially for the preteen and teen, there was no difference in A1C outcomes versus people who use pump therapy versus people who used MDI, which are multiple daily injections. And so I don't want to leave with that thought. But again, that's a huge testament to if we're not using it correctly, you still have to pre-bolus. You still have to do all of the behaviorally managed tweaks and understanding the nuances. The other piece I wanted to talk about too is just how do you know you're burnt out from the tech? And is it okay to take a break from the tech? Because I also think we often want to ask oh, what tech are you using? Oh, how are you managing blah, blah, blah. And it's well, I'm using this and that, or I'm on the twist, or I'm looping, or, people feel ashamed that they're not taking advantage of some of this technology. And that's cool. I did not want to use devices or technology. I was overwhelmed by it. I was on the swim team, the dance team. It did not work in my lifestyle. And there was no standalone CGM at that point. It was if you're using technology, you're on an insulin pump, and there was no tubeless option. There was no Omnipod. And then I went to college and I was like, okay, fine, I will do this. And since then, it's what's worked for me. But I think we also need to respect that technology and the use of all of the integrative things sometimes isn't for everyone. I think sometimes we have this sense of fear that we're missing out. Serious FOMO. Oh, I want a tech. I want this, that, and the other thing. But I want people listening to take away it's hard to go back once you are on the tech, and it is a huge learning curve. And sometimes the tech isn't everything for little tiny kids who have very diluted insulin and very, very small insulin needs 100%. And understanding when the technology doesn't work and you suddenly need to give a 6-unit correction via injection and always having vials on hand, having that baseline knowledge is so critical to prevent something like, a very severe high blood sugar and DKA and all of that stuff. So tech isn't everything. And I want people to take away, you don't have to do it all. You can have a CGM, you can have a pump on manual mode, you can go back and forth, you can try it out. But I think, like you said, knowledge is power. If you don't understand how it works, if you don't know what your goal is with using the technology, it's not all bells and whistles and pretty and sunshine and having a, cute tape and a fun little case. That stuff is fun, but it's a lot of work to manage it. From a burnout perspective, though, you, again, understanding your role within the tech, if you can't perform your role, that's when you know you're burnt out.
Yeah. When do we know we're sick?
Yeah.
When we can't achieve our activities of daily living effectively without unnecessary, if achieving them then causes a domino effect that I can't do something else. When we start saying that I can't a lot, that's pathology.
Mhm.
If How do I know the difference? How do I know if I have a little viral something and I'm fine and I don't need to see a doctor, or if I am really sick and I need support?
Yeah.
I can't go to work. I
Yeah.
can't sleep through the night.
Yeah.
I can't
If
breathe.
your regular, like, diabetes, like, tasks, like giving insulin or changing the site, I mean, we all have, like, aspects of diabetes that are just like, I don't, like, I dread doing it. For
Right.
me,
I
it's
don't
changing
want
the
to is a
sites.
different thing. I don't want to go to work is not a reason to go to the doctor. But
Right.
I can't go to work is a reason to go to the doctor. In diabetes, I don't want to eat that because it's going to make me not feel good is a life choice. I
Mhm.
can't eat that because of what it will do to my blood sugar. That's a pathology.
Yeah.
I can't enjoy time with friends and family. I can't focus at school. I can't
Yeah.
live a full, healthy life.
If the access to the tech is burning you out to the point where you're right, you're physically changed and your mental state is shifted, you can't leave the house. That's pure
I hear
anxiety
all
and
the time,
agoraphobia.
I can't have this pump. I have a job where I have to speak publicly in front of people. I can't have this thing going off.
Why are
Hi,
you
I
saying
speak
I can't?
publicly. Right.
And
What is the
that's
I
the
can't? What's
question
the
that I
disconnect?
ask my clients. Like, there's a gray area between I want to, but how do you get there?
Yeah.
What's going on in that space between A and B that's preventing you from saying, like, I can and I could, instead of I don't know. Because I think we are trained now to constantly catastrophize when we have these arrows. And my, like, biggest sort of takeaway for all of you is that the arrows, because I think more people are on CGM than they are on the, AID systems combined. The arrows don't always equal action. And for those who are looking to, maybe, who have a lot of, like, fear of lows or a lot of fear of highs, if the arrows are not serving you in the right way, there's ways to move around that. Change your target, or prick your finger,
Alerts.
take a couple days off from the CGM, God forbid. Like, promise you, you're gonna wake up in the morning.
It's the 80s. It's okay.
Yeah,
We survived the 90s without cell phones, believe it or not. We made it. And
yeah,
it's okay. It's okay
yeah,
to go off road a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And I will say that I don't think I've worked with a client in the last, like, 4 years that I've been with IDS, and, like, the 8 years that I've been doing what I do as a clinician, where someone hasn't said they're, like, not afraid of the low. And to normalize that, like, yeah, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid of the short term, the long term, but that fear doesn't mean you need to treat a low blood sugar at 150 and not go out to dinner because of that fear. How can we integrate the technology in a safe way that's going to, A, prevent burnout, and B, like, mitigate some of that fear? And that's where I think why the word integrated is such a crucial part of all of the work that we do. If you're interested, I always offer a 15-minute free consult call for anyone who really wants to dig into their own mental health journey for parents, caregivers, etc.
I wanted to lay down kind of some brass tacks because I'm on the nursing side. We need what are some action items? So first, identifying where you are with your tech.
Mm-hmm.
Identify, do I trust it? Do I not? Do I understand it? Do I not? Do
Right.
I feel like I'm using it effectively? Is it supporting me or is it undermining me? And if there's distance there, seek to close it. Um, so, knowledge, experience, guidance. That's a lot of what we do
Yeah.
at
Do
IDS.
like a little self check-in. Where am I at right now?
And where are my goals? Write them down. Figure out your goals with your diabetes management. Where are my expectations?
Mm-hmm.
This is a space where talking with a clinician can be super helpful because we get that false dichotomy that this is the goal and therefore anything that is not the goal is harm. Oh, there's a
Or
lot of
we're getting
space
this
there.
outside noise that is conflicting information with what we think is our own goal. We're being told what our goal should be, and we disagree with that. That's where we get a lot of our clients from. Well, I thought I should be here because I saw that so and so said I should have, A1C of 5.2 and 90% time in range. And I'm like, well, what's your range? Is that what you want? Or is that what this Facebook group is telling you that if you don't have this, you should be Y? And I think,
And what's the expectation of my tech?
yeah,
Is my goal an A1C of 5.8, but I'm on a system that aims at a 110? Good luck with that. That's going to be
yeah,
rough. You're battling the
yeah.
math. So let's discuss. But then but that is a goal. Okay, then what do we have to shift in
In
our
order to get
priorities
there,
to
right.
achieve
Maybe
that
it's more
goal?
exercise. Maybe it's walking. Maybe it's taking that step back and that 40,000-foot view to really fully understand your expectations, their expectations. And if you work together, you're a team. Your tech is physically attached to you, and you're going to be a really great team and have a really great partnership if you can understand it, know your role, and then learn to trust it until you can't or some awesome other version comes along.
Underneath it, if you are someone who wasn't as gifted as Anna and I to come into the type 1 diabetes world in the olden days before tech was ubiquitous, like I had a meter and pens. That was the tech that we started with, and even the meter wasn't real accurate.
I didn't even
Um,
have pens. I had a syringe.
Syringes, if you don't have that space, you're like, yeah, okay, resilience, trust your body, blah blah blah. I didn't have the 1980s boot camp like you did. I was born in 2012. We can learn to trust ourselves by observing our bodies, by understanding what our bodies actually, what is the expectation of our body, what is understanding our insulin, what is the expectation of our insulin, understanding the technology, what are the expectations of the technology, knowing how to live without it is critical.
You can do hard things. You can do new things, and new things are supposed to be like
But you
challenging.
can also give yourself to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to do this without. And those are the emergency calls we get. And emergencies are scary. And if you don't know how to deal with an emergency, you live in a constant state of panic that the emergency is going to happen and catastrophizing that
Yep.
if and when it does, it will lead to this horrible outcome.
Yep.
But if I know how to monitor my blood sugars in a healthy and effective but not stress-inducing way without my CGM, I don't get stressed when my CGM is wrong or the Dexcom server goes down or I can't connect to my pump or oh my gosh, this thing just sucks and I'm ripping it off my body and living without it for a week because I need to. I don't have those options, and without options, I'm in anxiety. I can't go from a pump to injections and back safely, effectively without anxiety. Getting education and support, knowing how to effectively live without tech is how we live with trust and proper expectations and empowerment with tech. Making sure that the purpose of your tech is serving your goals. If your goal is to sleep through the night, having your tech set up to super tight, super low targets, you've got a goal and your tech are in direct conflict with each other. We need to bring them closer together. Either maybe you sacrifice a little sleep now and then to stay tighter, or maybe you sacrifice a little alert to sleep better. We need to bring those conflicting things together in a healthy way. And then we also want to make sure that our tech is not undermining our mental health, that we are identifying what to ignore. Our brains are set up to actually ignore 80% of our world at any given time. There's a lot of input coming in, and we have to filter it out to survive. In nature, walking down the street, interpersonal reactions, our brains have been set up gradually over time to do that effectively over millions of years. Technology is a very new piece for our brain. So we're giving our brain information and telling it that it's all important. It's just not set up for that. We get very mentally overwhelmed, very mentally drained. So working again with trusted sources, clinicians, people in the know, not just the sphere of opinions of what is something that's actionable and important and what's just more info. I have 24-hour diabetes info. That doesn't mean I'm supposed to react to it all. And then the most important piece there, people go, well, then how do I know what to react to? How do I know what's a thing to do and what's not? Safety. So if blood sugars are so low that you're at risk, act on that. And that's what your tech should be letting you know. On the high end, are you not getting insulin? Not is your blood sugar imperfect, but are you not getting insulin? Is something in your system not functional? Get an alert. If you're not getting those, if you're not getting high-end alerts to the point where they're no longer burdensome, I say once or twice a day. If your CGM is yelling at you about something more than once or twice a day, it's not informing you to take action. It's just yelling at you that you're imperfect and inducing unnecessary vigilance and anxiety. For example, our CGM gives us a new number every 3 to 5 minutes because our body is a constant rolling entity. It is constantly changing. Our insulin takes 45 minutes to an hour to reach actual peak efficacy. It's actually takes 10 to 15 minutes to do anything after we inject or infuse. So there we go. I've gotten 3 to 5 data points that are now meaningless because I took insulin. And now I get 3 to 5 data points that mean nothing because my insulin hasn't even done anything yet. My physical state is not matching my numbers right now. And then it takes about an hour for my insulin to peak. It takes 3 hours or more for it to fully act. So I took an action and now I have 3 hours worth of data that is impacted by that action. So if I take more actions in there, unless my safety is at risk, I'm using bad data. I'm not getting the full picture. I'm letting my CGM tell me to do something I've already done. And now I have to wait to see the outcome. And that's uncomfortable. That's where once upon a time I had a question and I went to my mom and I said, Mom, what's the answer to this question? And she said, I don't know. And that was uncomfortable because I walked away and I still wanted the answer. But to get the answer took time because I didn't have technology. I waited till a Wednesday. Every other Wednesday, my mom took me to the library. And on that Wednesday, I could go hit the card catalog, research the answer, and find the answer. But that meant that it had to be worth it. It had to be pretty high on my priority list to answer that question because I was going to have to sit with that discomfort and that question for a bit. And that's kind of what we apply to our tech is we have to match the speed of our tech with the speed of our living and the speed of our insulin and the speed of our algorithm and the speed of our mental health of taking a breath and filter out what we don't need, use what we can effectively need to meet our goals that is based on trusting ourselves and our clinical knowledge based on healthy expectations that allow us to fully integrate into our world. And if there is any piece of that where you're thinking, I don't have that, I can't find that, or I'm getting conflicting things on that. That's what we're here for. That's what your medical team is here for, but that's what we do at Integrated Diabetes Services. And honestly, it's why I love my job. So thanks so much for joining us on this very tumultuous ride, cracking into our diabetes tech, what to do, and why sometimes it's a help and sometimes it's a hurt, how to make it hurt less and integrate it better. I'm Alicia, signing off for Anna Sabino. Have a great day out there.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Shiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.